The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
This is Great Match Generator. Welcome to Great Match Generator, the podcast where we look at great matches and see what made them great. I'm here with Greg Brown. How you doing, Greg? Penn State got a win finally.
Yes, they did. Really happy to see that. Hopefully it gives us some momentum to win the last two games as well.
Yes. And I'm here with not Beast Mike this week, but with Matt Richards. He is the forum moderator of the Greatest Match Ever forum on the Greatest Match Ever forum. Is that basically it, Matt?
Yeah, that's what I do. At least in the world of wrestling. Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yes, and we have 4 matches, 3 different combinations because two of the matches are the same combination. But we have Pirata Morgan versus El Faraon from EMLL 11/16/1990. We have Jackie Sato versus Tomi Aoyama from All Japan Women 1/4/1980. And then we have Randy Savage versus Tito Santana, 2 different iterations of it from 4/22/1986 and 5/4/1986. The 4/22/86 ones from MSG and the 5/2/86 ones from Maple Leaf Gardens. Where do we want to begin?
I don't got a preference, but if we don't we normally go in chronological? So you want to start with the women?
Oh yeah, we do normally go in chronological order.
Good with me.
Chronological order. So let's go with Jackie Sato versus Tomi Aoyama. First, what were your thoughts overall in this match?
Greg, gonna go first?
Sure. Sure. So the first thing is again, we talk about this with a lot of the Japanese matches. Is it's hard for me to tell who's who, but I did pick up this time. It was a little harder because these two looked almost identical.
Yeah.
Outside of their ring gear, just physically, they were both extremely skinny and had the same haircut. But yeah, they were wearing different outfits, so I was able to tell them apart. And it was a really interesting match. I don't think I've really seen something like this. It immediately caught my eye that these women were going at each other the way the men were, and this is all the way back in 1980.
Yeah. So
I go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was gonna echo the I think the standout thing about this match is just the kind of intensity of it, right? That they really they kind of hit the ground running and never slow down in this match. And there's I think a lot to appreciate within this match. But I did also like Greg. I'd never seen Tomi Aoyama, or how do you say that? Aoyama. I don't think I've ever seen her before. I'd seen a few Jackie Sato matches, and yeah, if you weren't there for the entrances and you were just sort of watching them with their hair in their faces fly around the ring, it would be very difficult to tell the difference between the two of them. But I thought that their physicality really matched each other really well.
I thought the legwork here was very good by Aoyama. Her legwork was very good in the match. It really complemented well with the selling as well.
Yeah, I also took note that legwork early in the match was great. I think I don't have a ton of context for this match, but if you think about it sort of in its context, Sato is kind of in the middle of a second of 3 championship runs. Her first one was a couple years long, so she's kind of say she's the ace of the company, because I don't really know if she was taking on that role at the time, but she was certainly a champion that was seen as a championship level contender, championship level wrestler, kind of at the top of the hill. So that kind of legwork is great early on to give you a sense of danger for this challenger. Obviously, the people in the context would know this challenger, but for out of context, at least that really helped me sort of see like, oh man, Aoyama is the real deal. She's going to give Sato a run for her money here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought the energy was very good in this match. I thought the crowd was at a fever pitch. It was very interesting to see a lot of women in the crowd too, with the shrieks.
Yeah, the crowd was one of the things I was definitely noticing. Well, Danny knows that I tend to pay attention to a lot of stuff around the match, not as much the moves and whatnot. And yeah, the crowd was really fascinating. It looked like you said, a lot of women, a lot of younger women, like schoolgirls almost, and they were reacting like they were watching a horror film. They were like recoiling, they were crying. Like I'm not exactly sure who they were rooting for, because I don't know the background like Matt does, but yeah, they were definitely reacting with a ton of emotion, and it gave a lot to this match.
Yeah, that's the thing I really love about 80s Joshi particularly, is that I don't know why. I don't know the dynamic of like why there are just like often these matches with like lots of young women who are responding as if it's their relatives out there fighting. But it's like in the biggest and most intense 80s Joshi matches that I've seen, you just get these white hot crowds of people who are invested in the best possible way. I think I think it adds a lot to the match, and this one definitely benefited from that as well.
Yeah, I agree, and I also thought this match had a certain grittiness, and finesse that hasn't been seen since. With and in 80s Joshi in general. Because I just thought it had a finesse with like the early like sort of work with like the springboard and the drop kick into the gut buster. That spot sort of made me shriek. At the same time, it had a grittiness to it as well.
Yeah, I love that spot. We talked about it a little before we got on air, but I absolutely love that spot. I immediately noted it as like, this is probably the best spot of the match, and it was relatively early.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite spots was later on when they did the spin, because A, it looked so much better than Cesaro's, and B, I think it was Jackie was taking it, and she sold it perfectly with like grabbing her head. Too many times these days you see somebody take a swing and they just kind of lay there. They don't actually sell anything. So I thought that.
Yeah, to that point, she like held her head like she was like all the blood was rushing to her head and it hurt, right? Like which is the idea of the move. Right. Where I do think, to Greg's point, like even now you'll see a lot of people like put their hands behind their head like they're relaxing, like it's a ride. Which I did think I never noticed that about modern people taking that big swing or big spin or whatever it's called until I saw this one and I was like, oh man, that's a really good way to take that move. And I think, you know, another spot that I really liked, and this has to have a name, but where Sato would just whip Tomi off the ropes and then just fly and grab her hair and face and just slam her into the mat as she flew around.
Several
it's a Sato move. Like she does it in a lot of her matches, but here especially, I think she just laid it in, and it was just in the sweet spot where I think it really elevated the match and, or for me at least, really elevated the action on the whole.
And she like lays out and almost like chokes her with that move too. With the like whips her and like pulls her down.
Yeah, and they're both Go, sorry.
That move is incredible.
Yeah, they're both so tall and lanky that they stretch almost across the whole ring when they land.
Yeah. Well, overall, this match had an atmosphere around it that was really good. I liked the double knockout finish too.
I was really confused by it. I wrote a couple notes here. I was like, wait, did the ref just count to 10? I'm confused. The only symbols in this graphic I recognize are KO. Are they both knocked out?
Yeah, I think it ends in a double KO. Again, maybe I'm not exactly sure about that, but that's how I took it. That's how I interpreted the finish, and I was kind of okay with that, given the match that they built.
Yeah, given the match that they built, it was very good. Overall, 4.5 stars I gave it. Really, really good stuff. Really good stuff here. Intensity.
I went a little higher. I went 4 3/4. Just a little lower. You know, maybe not. Probably closer to 4.5 than 5, if I'm being honest. But I really thought watching this in not just the context of the 4 matches that you had lined up for today, but I also watched it in the context of 2 other sort of high-profile Jackie Sato matches from 1980, and I thought this was the best one of the lot by a pretty comfortable margin. And so I give it the just under elite marks, but this is really top-notch 80s Joshi to me.
Rick?
I'm going lower with only a 4, but that is honestly because of me. I didn't have all the context going in, so that kind of took things away uh, for me personally. But as a standalone match, it was still really, really good. So
And also, you should know I'm a pretty generous star giver, so I'm probably even generous amongst like other people who would like have the context. So it's certainly uh, nobody should sort of measure whether they're high or low or something based on my ratings. I'm pretty nice.
fair enough. Yeah, I don't know if I'm nice or not nice, but again, I don't have that background, especially with stuff outside of the U.S. So um, it just if I don't have that context going in, it can take away from me.
Want to get to these Randy Savage matches? Randy Savage, Tito Santana, both at similar time periods, both in the midst of a feud. 422.86 and 54.86. I was wrong on the first date. It was 54.86 from Maple Leaf Gardens. And this first match is 422.86 from the MSG. And this MSG match was really interesting to me. It was it was the first time really seeing Savage in a brawl type setting. You see him in these choreographed matches, and you're like, oh, this guy comes off like a star. You see him like it with Warrior or with Steamboat, and you're like, man, this guy is a star, but Steamboat comes off great. Obviously, with Warrior, Savage comes off as a better man in that match, but in this match, Savage feels like a star. He moves with such fluidity. He has like almost like a bird looking for prey sense of urgency about him.
After watching both, my first question was, are you sure these are two different matches? Because yeah, we all know that Randy had the propensity to choreograph out his matches ahead of time. But I counted, I think, 6 or 7 spots that were identical, both in what they did and when they did them. Not to mention the entire ending is identical. So that was just kind of weirding me out the whole time, was how similar the two matches were, which does make sense though, because they were only a few days apart.
But with that, a lot of these house show matches were worked around the country, around the loop, where these fans hadn't seen these matches before. So
And that's what I figured, yeah.
Yeah, so you get it was kind of nice to see it because it's two versions of the same match, as Greg said. Like, so not only are they on the same loop, there probably lots of wrestlers and pairings that are having very similar matches on these shows and sort of around this time period because they're doing their thing against in front of different audiences, right? They weren't performing for streaming YouTube audiences. And then on top of that, you have Savage's, desire to have everything planned out in a very meticulous way. So that's certainly what we're seeing here. I still came away thinking the first one was a little bit better, just for my tastes. I'm not really sure why, except that maybe it feels just a little grittier. It felt a little rougher around the edges, where for whatever reason the 5-4 match felt just a touch more put together and polished. But again, that might just be me imagining it. That might be the aesthetic, the camera work, as much as the actual match itself. So, great. I mean, both of them were a great match, but it was very, very similar, but they were very, very similar to one another. And I think it was kind of a neat little like, I don't know, look at how wrestling worked at that time and how great matches can maybe feel not as great when they don't feel as unique. Because I felt like I came away from watching the second one thinking less of both of them. A little.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying, and I also agree about the grittiness of the first one. Um, Couple things I wrote down here that I think gave it that feel. Number one, the ref looked like a complete slob. He was in like a stained shirt, with like this towel hanging off the back of him, and then in the second match, it was your classic WWF guy with the bow tie and everything. So there were little things like that. I think the around the stage area or the around the ring area was was grittier, and you had those old 80s like steel grates like as fencing to keep the fans away. It was, yeah, I think it was the whole arena just had that gritty feel, like you said. um
Can somebody remind me, did in the second one, did they do the spot where Savage comes off the top and takes the chair to the gut? I know they did it in the first match, and it was my favorite spot between the two, but I didn't remember it happening in the second match.
I don't know about the chair to the gut. I know they both opened with him going to the top and taking a fist to the gut.
Yeah, but in the first match, there's sort of a turning point spot about maybe 2/3 of the way through where Savage comes off the top to the outside. Well, what was that? Sorry.
2/3 into the match where Savage takes a chair to the gut.
Yeah, he comes off the top for a double axe handle to the outside, and Tito hits him with a chair. And that was to me like the best spot of either match, and maybe the one thing I could point to wrestling wise that maybe set the first one off just a little bit for me. That was a really good point about the refs. I didn't even notice that like there was this sloppy like replacement looking ref in the first one, which probably had a lot to do with actually like why I liked the match better without me even noticing it.
I really noticed at the end when he took the bump and then like they were trying to get him up, they like zoomed in and his shirt, like I said, was totally stained, and I was just like, who did they pull this guy out of the crowd? Like, what is this?
I love that about
the athletic refs.
What was that, Danny?
They were probably still using state athletic commission refs in MSG at the time.
Yeah, they probably were. That's the thing I really, I don't know. It's one of those things I like generally about like the 80s, 80s brawls, and what we'll see in like lucha brawls in the 80s and 90s as well. Like there's just this sort of like haphazardness around certain parts where like you'd never see something like that on, your modern WWE or AEW or something like that. And there's something to be said for taking a little of the polish off of wrestling to add some grit, and even if it's completely by accident.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that, especially in the third match we're gonna watch. I thought both of these brawls were great. But both brawls between Randy and Tito were great. Both in the 3.5-star range. To me.
Yeah, I'd probably give both something around the 4-star range. I think I had the first one at like 4.25. They may be pushing 4.5, and then I saw the second one. I was like, I don't feel like I can. It doesn't feel like it really. If it could just churn these out on a whim, it doesn't feel like it deserves it, which maybe is actually unfair. But I didn't knock them down too far, so they're both probably around the 4-star range for me.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat. Especially with the ending. The first time I see it with the roll up pin into the reversal, grabs the tights, etc. I was like, okay, that's cool. That's an interesting little finish there. The heel gets away with one, and then to see only a few days later him do exactly the same thing, kind of like you said, it kind of knocked it down. But I still enjoyed him. So yeah, I'm gonna go 4 stars as well.
Yeah, I think really quickly it's it shows to me how like there are ways of doing great wrestling that don't translate to like star ratings and great wrestling lists and things like that, where like this is really admirable that they just churned this out in multiple venues. And I have to imagine it's not the only two that they had something like this. So that they could just sort of casually have this match together is incredibly impressive. And even though that doesn't maybe translate to my highest marks, it's great in a different way. Because there's lots of different ways that wrestling can be awesome, if that makes sense.
Right. Right. I agree with that sentiment there. Because not everything is great in terms of star rating thing, like squash matches
Absolutely.
or the loop match.
By the
Let's
way,
go to
real quick, who was on commentary in Madison Square Garden? Because it sounded like Don King.
Oh, we have no idea. It was just some random fan. It was like Gorilla Monsoon, Ward Alfred Hayes, and like some random fan.
Okay. Yeah, it sounded like Don King was like on commentary, and it almost gave it like, and because it was in Madison Square Garden, it almost gave it this boxing feel. So that might have
I was
that
mention something
we're
about the
talking about
commentary
as well.
too. That
Yep.
sort of elevated that too.
Yeah, I also noted that like even though the commentary like knew what they were talking about in the second match, like knew it was a no DQ match, where in the first match they seemed kind of confused by the whole thing. I still preferred the first match commentary. I think again, probably just the whole package of rough around the edges New York wrestling was probably what was making me enjoy that a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's go to awesome Pirata Morgan versus El Faraon here, EMLL 11/16/1990 here. This was freaking awesome. 2 out of 3 falls, hair versus hair. This was freaking amazing.
So to get this out of the way, the translations are we're watching a pirate take on a pharaoh.
Yep.
Which is incredible.
Which is incredible. And like Pirata Morgan just comes straight out of the gates, just beats the living crap out of El Faraon to start off, bust him wide open. And then the pacing and urgency was there the entire time. And I loved this match.
Yeah, I really like that El Faraon looks like someone's dad who stumbled into the ring at the beginning. He's got his track jacket on, and like he doesn't really look prepared to fight as Pirata Morgan is just beating him mercilessly. And then of course by the end of it, he looks like a damn hero. He's actually like really firing back, and I think he's in his 40s by this point, but he still is able to hang with Pirata Morgan, who, you know, as I understand it, was really considered one of the best in the world around this time. At least the year before, was really highly regarded amongst not just your kind of tape traders, but your Meltzers and so on. So, you know, people really thought highly of Pirata Morgan, but El Faraon is hanging with him by the end of this after taking a pretty brutal beating in that first fall.
Yeah, that first fall was pretty brutal right there.
The first thing I noticed was that Pirata, I was like, this guy is such an uber heel. He's attacking this poor guy in a tracksuit at ringside. And then I realized, oh no, that's his opponent.
Yup. Yup. And you would just like, beating the crap out of him. He went to first fall with this diving splash, which was incredible, and then he keeps on the attack. But then Alpha, this match just had everything. The all-time blade job from Pirata Morgan. Can we just talk about this all-time blade job?
Gushing buckets and buckets.
Yeah, Pirata Morgan always in these brawls got the most out of his blade jobs, and I think this is probably his best one. In my book at least. To your point about this having a little bit of everything. I heard this take forever ago on a forum, and I apologize, I can't remember who I heard this from, but it was essentially that this is the lucha match for, regardless of what kind of lucha you like, right? So it's a lucha brawl at its core. It's a stakes lucha brawl at its core, but it's also got some flying. It's got a decent amount of technical wrestling and grappling. So it's got a little bit of the kind of three ways that I think we often think about and talk about lucha or lucha styles that really excel. And I think they do a great job with all of them. They blend together seamlessly in a way that makes me think that the degree of difficulty here is actually kind of high. And you don't notice all the different things they're doing when they're doing it because you're just watching a fight. You're just watching two people who hate each other try to murder each other. And that's what, in some ways, the best wrestling makes you think in the moment, regardless.
This was honestly my first experience with any kind of real lucha, like full-blown from Mexico. And it was really fascinating to watch because I've always been under the impression that lucha is nothing but high-flying flippy stuff. I've been getting a little bit of exposure to the submission side through Angelico in AEW. And seeing this, I was just like, oh, I see now. They're really good at submission work. I'd never put it together in my head that the Mexican surfboard is Mexican. But what I loved is seeing it applied correctly in this match. It was really, really well done. And it just went to the submission skills of both of these guys.
I'm 100% lucha brawls are one of my favorite styles, period. And to the forum that we talked about earlier, the greatest match ever project, I think maybe my top 5 lucha matches are sort of at their core lucha brawls. They might have some grappling in them. I take that back. There's one grappling match in there, but the submission, lucha submissions, are really fascinating to watch because they seem very distinct from the way submission wrestling works in sort of more traditional American wrestling or Japanese wrestling. But at the same time, they still look really painful. And I think if you can buy into the psychology of lucha and kind of the logic of their movements, because I do think some people have a little bit of trouble with that. If you can buy into that, and it took me a little bit of time, lucha brawls and lucha title matches have so much to offer. And I think this is a really nice, I'm actually kind of glad this was your first sampling of that, because it does offer a little bit of everything from what your really top end late 80s to through the 90s lucha offers. And I watch most of that stuff out of context and kind of cherry pick it myself, but this seems like a pretty good first step down that path.
Yeah, and one little detail I'll point out is that Pirata went to do a pendulum spot later on, I think. It might have been Faraon, whatever. But so whenever you see a guy in modern WWE wrestling do a Mexican surfboard style move, they just kind of either yell or punch the guy, and they always offer their arms back. They just put their arms back. And it's in a fight, you would never just offer your arms to the guy so you'd be put in this intricate hold. But here, he bent the guy's ankle and he was screaming out in pain, and he reached back to like stop it, and that's how he got his arms. And it was just this tiny detail of like how you set up that move, but it was so much more realistic that I really appreciated it.
Yeah, I love that you pointed that out. It's really the devil is in the details with a lot of this stuff. And I think what you'll find if you get into it is that you'll see a lot of the 2 out of 3 falls matches will kind of follow this pattern. And for some people, that can be really boring, right? They can be like, well, like why do the matches follow the same pattern? But it's really in how they tell the story, right? It's, in some ways all wrestling follows very similar patterns. And just the way Lucha kind of has done it historically can be a little difficult for some people, again. And I'd say this not because anybody here has indicated that, but I've just seen it a bunch. People say they don't like Lucha for XYZ reasons. But there is such attention to detail and the fluidity at which these wrestlers can get into some of these submission holds, to be perfectly blunt, looking like they do. El Faraon's case, right? Like 40-year-old guy, he doesn't look scary on face value, but man, once he starts moving, you see like this guy's an athlete. This guy's got something, and he's a storyteller and a really good luchador, a really good wrestler as well.
And the finish doesn't even hurt it. The finish doesn't even hurt it at the end, where obviously it's a ruse on Pirata Morgan as he's trying to punch the guy, and the ref and the doctor ends the match. But this was freaking great overall. It just speaks to what attention to detail does in wrestling, or what it had a little bit of everything, and really it really speaks to how transcendent Lucha can be when put in the right context.
Yeah, actually, can you explain that ending? I was a little confused what happened. It looked like one of the ringmen kind of quit or threw in the towel.
Yeah, that's sort of what happened. One of Pirata Morgan's guys screwed him over, and it was obviously a screwy finish. It was a screw job finish. Essentially, that's probably what it was. I was a little confused by it. Matt, can you clarify it?
Yeah, honestly, I think I was sort of getting that there was a doctor, right, like looking at him.
Yeah.
And I think I thought it was a doctor stoppage, but
Doctor stoppage.
But again, maybe I wasn't just paying quite enough attention. I was thought it was a doctor stoppage, and then didn't pay that much attention to it this time around, because this is the second time I'd seen this match, so I wasn't maybe looking for that detail at the end, thinking I knew what was going on. But that was my impression. But regardless, it ends up being a stoppage, and what I got, I think the sort of takeaway for me was it was a stoppage because he was busted up.
Right.
And I think that sold a lot of the actual brutality of it.
And it sort of sold the drama after the match too. I watched a lot of the post match, and Pirata was obviously arguing with everybody.
Yeah, I think he's arguing. I mean, again, I think he's arguing because he's arguing the doctor stoppage, right? And if you've ever seen, I don't know, any MMA fight, literally everybody argues the doctor stoppage. So I think that's it. Again, if now I kind of want to look it up. I was kind of just scrolling through some reviews of it, and
he was punching El Faraon as the match got stopped.
Yeah, it looked like he was at least trying to continue the match.
Yeah.
I did like how eventually he resigns himself to the outcome, and they start cutting his hair, and there's just so much blood, and they're like trying to. That's
such a great visual.
Yeah, so really quickly, I did just kind of look up some reviews of the match, and it does look like the consensus is that it was a doctor's stoppage because of just how much blood Pirata was losing. So despite him sort of still fighting back, there's this idea that he was on the verge of losing way too much blood, and that's why they stopped the match.
They're like, stop this damn match.
Um,
Parada's losing so much freaking blood.
but yeah, I mean, again, to me, that's like also the sign of a great match. Is I didn't need to have a real surefire grasp of what happened there to think this was awesome.
No,
I
I
think I
didn't
understood
go
it, but
far
I didn't.
away.
Yeah, it didn't need to be real cut and dry for me. And that's also another thing I think you get a lot with a lot of lucha brawls is these kind of screwy finishes that are not super clear because unless you speak Spanish, and I don't, so I oftentimes find myself kind of guessing at what's happened at the end or looking it up.
Yeah.
I spoke I s- know enough Spanish just from my high school classes to pick out words here and there, but it still didn't help. And either way, like you said, I thought in the moment, like the second it happened, I was confused and I was like, oh, that's kind of after this great brawl, that's kind of anticlimactic. But then with the arguing and with the hair and everything, um, I ended up kind of liking it. Like you said, it didn't take away from the story of the match, the way I think it often does in WWE because they rely so heavily on the screwy finish. Um, it didn't take away from that match at all.
Yeah, that's kind of something I wonder if like in 10 years, if the WWE is not doing screwy finishes so much, if watching some of those matches a little bit out of context will actually maybe they'll age well because we won't sort of be thinking about them um, as part of this larger problem within WWE. Like we're not watching this as a larger problem. Within the promotion, we're watching this as a single match that it's a stakes match, it's hair versus hair, so we know there's a feud. We know there's this build, and I've read a little bit about that in the past, not even recently, but watching something out of context can sometimes actually be beneficial for the match, I think.
I will say because there was stakes, I was surprised there was a screwy finish. Like if I was Parada, I wouldn't want to lose my hair because some doctor at ringside said so. Like
Yeah. Well, one of the things that is a trope, again, I'm going off of like sort of reading people who know a lot more about lucha than myself, is that in the stakes matches you get a little bit more of like the technico getting one up on the Rudo via something kind of screwy because they're finally getting their comeuppance, and they don't stick as closely to the Rudo Technico dynamics that are traditional. And so it's pretty common to see kind of what we would think of as screwy finishes in these matches, and fans kind of expect in a lot of ways that this person who's been screwing someone over and over and over again is finally going to get screwed over, and that's actually the payoff in some ways. So sometimes that actually does take me out of some matches, but as long as something like this is built around it that is really, really good, I don't tend to mind it that much.
with that context, that makes a lot of sense. I actually kind of like that ending now.
Yeah.
Raw. I rated it 4.5 stars. This was my match of the week. A little ahead of the Jackie Sato Tomi Aoyama match. Really, really good stuff.
I'll go ahead and give mine. I mean, again, just like last time with the Sato Tomi match, I'm going to give this 4 3/4. And I'm actually going to take the Joshi match by just a hair. And really, I think it comes down to lately I've been more into 80s Joshi than I have Lucha. It's probably as much as anything a mood thing. So I think they're neck and neck. I think they're of equal quality, just below the absolute elite tier, but as good as it gets otherwise. And I think this is pretty top end lucha stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm gonna echo your sentiments. 4.5 and my match of the week, definitely. Got to see a lot of different lucha styles. And especially after this conversation and kind of hearing a little bit of the context of how lucha, really works, was it was definitely my favorite one of the week.
All right, for next time, I have to generate this stuff. So I have to make a group, and then 4 matches for next week. Here we go. So we have from Evolve, our first match from Evolve. We have Chris Hero versus Kuto Hikata from 3/13/2010. Here,
It's a good match.
Hikata Hidaka. How do you say his name? Ikuto Hidaka.
Oh, I don't know.
Evolve.
I'd have to be looking at it, and I still wouldn't know.
3/13/10. Then we have Roosh versus Negro Casas. 8/1/2014 from CMLL. So we get to watch a little more lucha here, to Greg's delight. And we get to watch Negro Casas, which is awesome. CMLL. And that's from 8/1/2014. And then we have Kawada versus Shinya Hashimoto. 2/22/2004. I'm just writing this stuff down.
There's going to be some hard hitting in that one. I'm going to go out on a limb.
Oh, no crap. From All Japan, 2/22/2004. I think I would expect that from those two men. And then we have Ricky Steamboat versus Toby Blanchard. Jim Crockett Promotions, 11/22/1984.
That's an interesting lineup.
Versus, yeah, it is an interesting lineup.
I was just about to say we're finally getting some more recent stuff in the 2000s, and then you slap an 84 on there.
Yeah. It's not me, man.
It's the generator.
It's the generator that does this. We get to watch some Kawada. We got to watch some Negro Casas, who is a marvel. I can't wait to watch Negro Casas, personally.
Casas is a gem. Timeless. He'll be around forever.
He's still around.
Yeah, I can't remember if I think I've seen that match. I'll recognize it when I start watching it again. But yeah, I think I've seen that one. It's it's two great wrestlers. It's hard for either one of those to have a bad match together.
I haven't heard of Casas, but I've heard of Roosh.
And then Kawada versus Hashimoto. Oh, I know what that match will be. A lot of forearms, a lot of kicks, a lot of... I may get into this tonight with Kawada and Hashimoto. I just have a feeling about that match.
What's
A lot
the
of
date on that one
forearms.
again?
That's the 222.04 one from All Japan.
Okay, I don't think I've seen that match.
It's going to be hard hitting. We all know that.
Yeah, it's 2004 Kawada versus Hashimoto's. It's, it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out what's going to happen in that match.
Doesn't take a rocket scientist. No. And then Chris Hero versus Ikuto Hakata. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I've seen that one. I saw that one a couple years ago. Somebody sent me a link via the project actually. Good match. That era Chris Hero is great. It's sort of unique, but I'd like to see it again, get a refresher on that one. But I remember it being quite good. Some intricate work.
Yep. And then Ricky Steamboat versus Tully Blanchard. We saw in 1984 in there.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen
Jim
that.
Crockett.
Or if I have
you
it was
seen
so
that?
long. I don't think I have.
Oh, so we're in for a treat next week, Greg, and possibly Matt, and possibly Beast Mike. What do you think, Greg?
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm gonna get to see Cassius Ono in his indie persona.
Yep. Plugs.
Go check out the forum. It is, I always forget the actual address, so I'm really underprepared for just half a second. It's at gweproject.freeforum.net. And then I'm on Twitter at markoutmountain.
Greg.
I am on Twitter at PSU Optimus, like the Transformers character. But most of my work is over on YouTube. I'm under the name Wrestling Optimus there, where I play around with wrestling action figures.
Yes. Do you still do your Dynamite reviews?
I do. There should be one out probably Thursday night.
Awesome. And I am DJ D Kooks on Twitter. Thank you all for listening to this Great Match Generator, and we will see you next time.